Hello there, and welcome once again to my little arty corner here on YouTube. My name's Angela, and as well as having a bit of a passion for drawing and pattern, amongst other things, I also enjoy helping others to discover their creativity, to find some confidence in themselves, and the ability to explore how to draw things and to use patterns and colour in your own way. For me, it's about finding your unique style. What is you? And it is unique to you, whether other people are working in a similar way. There's always something about your work that says this is yours. So that's my plan. Kind of, I'm sure. As well as encouraging people to make use of sketchbooks, because I'm discovering the power of sketchbooks after 20 years of seriously working on art, more or less. Yeah, 20 years. I can be incredibly dense. I do have to say that. What we've been doing over the last two videos, and I'm going to carry on with today, is I had a request from a lovely subscriber who asked for, how do you deconstruct? This is the word used. Deconstruct things like shells or birds or other things to create drawings. And that's what I've been showing. And we started with perhaps the simplest of shells. I say perhaps, well, two of them, spiral and the cockle shell, because they're both basically one shape with some little embellishments. And the key to these is getting that one shape down first, and then everything else follows. Yesterday I did this, which looks a lot more complicated, but it isn't. Again, it's using that idea of the shape you start with. Here we've got a kind of ginkgo leaf. So it's basically a triangle where the curves, the outside edges here curve inwards and the bottom edge curves outwards. Top edge, side edge, whichever way round there it is. And then these flutes and everything else, the little rippled edge can come in afterwards. It's that basic shape. You can see it just about here in pencil still. This one, the spiral was the key to this. Drawing that spiral, looking at it and thinking, hang on, the distance between the lines I'm drawing gradually gets wider. And I chose to finish, I think in my drawing I finished a bit sooner than this. I didn't have as many spirals. It doesn't matter. I'm not making a copy of this. I'm using this as a guide to create a stylized version or a kind of shell that I can draw again and again in simple ways, but embellish in more complicated ways. And then yesterday it was this one here, which looks a bit more complicated, but it's basically still a triangular shape. It's sort of like a long, stretched out triangle. I draw one a bit wider than this at the top and shorter, so it was a wider kind of shape. Doesn't matter, because there will be some that are that shape. And this one I really made really quite wide and short. Again, that's neither here nor there. It looks like one of these shells. And I wanted bigger areas so that I could add pattern and embellishment to them. And I went through this. If you want to see how I did this, yesterday's video, and I will do my best to put a link in the description below. I'm pretty good at remembering these days. Notice I say pretty good. Doesn't always mean I'm perfect. Definitely not perfect. So I think today we'll have a look at another shell that could be a bit more complicated. I think we'll have a look at this one. Just grab my glasses as I throw them down again after I pick them up. Let's have a look at that and break down the shapes. Again, I'm just going to use one of my drawing pens on here. If you print things out, never be afraid to draw on them. See, if you use digital art for drawing, like you know, on your iPad or tablet or whatever, then you can do it there and you can use a coloured pen or whatever. So basically what I've got here, and I'm going to start here, I can see I've got a teardrop shape here. Hope you can see that. There's a teardrop kind of shape. But at the bottom here, it's actually, I'm going to adjust this because it does have, it spikes up at the bottom a little bit, so I'm just going to adjust that there. We've then got a wavy spiky bit on the edge, which I may want to add or I may not. We've got this, excuse me, spiky bit up here, which is easy enough to add. It's basically a triangle but with a slight shape. And then there's a triangle here as well, just like over here. We've already drawn this. We're just adding a different top. So instead of this kind of top, actually it's that teardrop shape just twisted round, isn't it, with some extra bits added on. So we can do this. We can. You can do this, I can do this, and I am now going to do my best to remember to fix the autofocus. I think I've got it, hopefully. We won't be going in and out too much. Just check. No, we're fine. Does it bounce? No, it stays. Excellent. So again, I'm going to draw in pencil. And I'm going, if I bring this down here, you can see what I'm going to draw. I'm going to start with this sort of like teardrop shape, and I will draw a teardrop in, or a pointy egg shape. But remember, I need to remember that I've got to put, actually, do I do that? Let me have a look. I think I may just pop. I'm putting the centre line of my triangle in the direction I want it to go in, and then that makes it easier for me to draw the triangle, because it doesn't go straight down from the top, does it? Or does it? See, even I get my eraser out. Let's start again. Because if I have a look at this, I've realised as I'm drawing it, I need to go back and think again, because this, oh, let me take a pen again. The top of this and the bottom of this kind of connect. So if I draw that centre line in, that will help me somewhat. And then I can see that this teardrop shape here is slanted slightly in this kind of direction. It's quite a nice big one. I've made this a bit fatter, plumper than that one, but that's fine. And then if I look here, I can see that the outside edge here of this triangle actually comes away from the side, as does this one. You see, it joins the side. So that's what I'm going to do. This one, this shape, the line is just a little bit below the point of my teardrop, so I shall do that, and it comes down. And then the rest of these I'll just leave as they are. If I look at these lines here, again I'll pick my pen up, I can see that they are bending in this kind of direction, and that this one would be, I think, as well. So I'll be all right there, I think. So let me have a look. Yep, so I need to adjust this because this shape needs to be a bit lower there. That's better. Because I need it in the same kind of shape as I'm going to have with these. So let me put these lines in. And they're going to get closer together towards the point, just as yesterday. And there we are. That's the basic pencil shape for this particular shell. So I'm going to use No.5 pen here to draw this in. And I'm going to put some little changes of my own in here. Or perhaps I'll redraw it like I did yesterday. So I'm going to start by drawing this in, remembering that I'm going to be drawing the bottom slope, or the furthest down line. That didn't quite match up there, but that's okay. It's because I'm not trying not to move my paper around for you. bear in mind that these do bump out a bit. So I think I'll draw the bump outs before I put the lines in today. Because I just think that I'll find it easier to join the lines up or to control the shape of these. If you watch yesterday's video, I drew each of these sections one after the other, rather than drawing the outside edge. And today I'm going to draw, I've drawn the outside edge, and now I'm adding these sections in like that. And at the top, this is where I'm going to add something that I can't see on the image, but I think I would quite like, is that this tip here, I'm just going to create it as a little U shape or an end, a rounded end shape, part of the curve, as if this is going into the shell rather than being separate to it, because that's how I've drawn it. I think the original shell, it wasn't separate, it was just part of it. But that's fine, I've ended up with this here and I'm fine with that. The one thing I do want to do again is I do want to put these little sections underneath, because I can actually see them in the photograph I'm working from. And also they separate the sections for me. This has got nothing in it at all, it's completely blank. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about that. Here I am going to pop this in, but I think I'm going to exaggerate it because I can. And I'm going to put some lines in here like this. Can you see where I've got spiky bits there? I'm going to make use of them as if they're spines, pointy spines, like so. So I put the lines in to help. I'm going to have to move this to help me, guide me to pop those in. And then I'm going to draw this kind of shape in between them. Now I am not drawing, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I'm not drawing an exact representation of these shells. I'm creating something that's stylized, and that means I'm stylized and sort of like imagined. I'm doing things to it that I particularly like and that I particularly think will look interesting, intriguing, a little bit different, but it still has the essence of this shell here. So instead of having this sort of like zigzaggy edge, I can see little bits underneath the zigzags, where there are lumps and bumps and so on. I've decided to turn it into something that's like a fin on a fish, or a dragon's wing, sort of, or part of, what you'd get down the back of a dragon, maybe a sail of a dimetrodon. Yes, that was a dinosaur reference. Yeah. So I've got lots of things in my head from looking at things. I have lots, and when I draw things, sometimes they remind me of other things. So let me pop this out the way and we'll work on this, because there are some things I think I'd like to add. I am going to erase the pencil lines while the ink is, well, I think it is dry here. And before I do anything else, that's great. Okay, back to, I've got my 05 pen here again. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some weight, some thickness to the lines. Basically to the bottom and bottom left, not the entire left. It's hard to describe, but where it curves around. So this one's pointing upwards, whereas from here it's the left pointing down. Again, this is pointing upwards, so I want to go roughly from the middle down to create that darker line there. Like so. And I'm going to do the same with these. Oh darn it, these were a bit on the damp side here. Just add a bit of weight there. So to the bottom of those. And here I'm definitely going to darken that up there. And that last one. Perhaps just a bit of weight along the edges where it begins to curl round. So that's nice. I like that. I'm going to dig out the 03 because I do want to put a border in here along the edge, and I also think I might pop one along there as well. Just a line here that just separates this into two sections at the moment. And I am going to just add some weight at the bottom of these lines, just to, instead of having them straight, is to give them, as they say in Zentangle, character or interest. I'm also going to coil the end of that round. Doesn't exist in the shell. Doesn't exist, but I like spirals and shapes, and it just feels that this is finished. Okay, now this section here is rather large and it looks rather big and intimidating-ish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some more teardrop shapes inside, but I'm kind of going to have them all connected at the bottom, I think. Do I want to do that? I think so. Perhaps one more, and then I'll do something with that open space in the middle perhaps. So this gives me that border, that edge I can do something with. I'll decide on that in a moment. Just going back and touching areas up. This side where there would be a little bit of shadow at the bottom of these bumps on this side as well. So I'm just adding that there. Okay, I want to fill this section with some pattern. Now I could use some of my favourite patterns, but I'm going to have a look back in my sketchbook here, and I will show you when I find the page. I really don't want to show you me flicking through pages. Hopefully this will be sharp enough on the screen. I've started filling some pages with patterns and textures that I can use. Some will be familiar to you as sort of Zentangle patterns, others are kind of just textural filler patterns. Just really simple ones. So I'm looking here for something I'd like to use. I know what I'd like to use in this section here actually. And I'm going to use that kind of starburst pattern that I like. I say starburst because I really do like this. It reminds me of patterns in some kinds of rock or fossils. Kind of. But I just think here it will just make just quite a nice kind of textural pattern. Just to fill this section in. I may be wrong. And if I don't like what I've done at the end, I've got something to learn from. And really, that's the whole point of a sketchbook, is trying things out, learning from the process, if you ever do, in my case, and having a bank of resources to draw upon later Perhaps when you need some inspiration or you think, hang on, I've done something like this before. And they're also a really good way of keeping track of where you started and where you end up by the end of your sketchbook. And then you start a new one, which also charts your journey in art. Or even in life if you choose to write in it and use it like a journal as well. As nobody says you can't do the two. It's your sketchbook. When I was doing A-level art, which is a qualification over here in the United Kingdom that most school students do around the age of 18, and you need A-levels to go to university to study for a degree course. So the education system is different in Britain than it is, say, in America. I did this when I was in my early 40s, or, around 40, with the sixth form in the school. The sixth form are the oldest students, they're aged 16 to 18. And my sketchbooks, I've still got them, I've got them downstairs, are interesting when I do look at them because I see where I was 20 years ago and very much more, focused on a particular style, I suppose, or a way of doing things because that's what was expected of the course. But I can see the elements of where I was going as well. A lot more observational drawing and detailed drawing like that, but also quite a lot of whimsy and, creative things. I did a lot with textiles as well, and embroidery on textiles, almost like painting with them. So I've got this here, and I don't know why I picked up such a thick pen. Here you are, story time. I can't tell stories and draw generally, but I just think this could do with a border. And I'm really not happy with this upper part, with what I've done with it. Thinking about it, I could have treated it almost like a seed pod, or put stripes going sideways in it to bring out the shape. I'll see how the time is going for the video, because I'm very conscious that these particular videos are taking quite a long time for me to do. So I'm going to try and focus on doing one shell in a video, with shading and colour, no doubt. And I'll leave the outside as it is for now. For this one, I want this to feel that it has got some dimensions, so I'm going to do curved lines on either side of that straight line to enhance that feeling that there is some curving going on there. Inside these, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I think I may. Let me have a look, shall I? I'm going to go to, you could see this coming, couldn't you, betweed. I was thinking of doing something like a Ruka's here. A Zentangle pattern when I mentioned these things. But I just thought this would look perfect in here. After all, it is one of my favouriteest patterns. I keep telling you this. It's become one of my favourite patterns. It's taken me years to work out how to draw it, and it was only when I was watching a video, I think it was one of these Zentangle Ink videos. It could have been somebody else's, and suddenly the pennies dropped, and I thought, oh, so that's how you do it, is it? Oh, really? So, now, I think I'm going to use these in these sections, these little arches, simply because I really like them. And I like this one because I like the way it feels that it's coming out from underneath the top. This one feels a bit clunky. And I'm going to go to my medium-sized pen to do this one, because I need slightly thicker lines here. And I'm going to start in the centre and work my way out and around. Like so. There are places here where I think I've missed the line a little bit, but it's fine. again, it's sketchbook stuff. I just love the way this kind of makes, the way I've drawn it is that can you see how the lines aren't all straight down? They're changing with the shape of the line. So it feels like they're going in a circular motion as well. So I start in the centre, which is where the one would be, I suppose, the straightest, and we just do the same again. If you don't get a whole one on the ends, like here, that's fine. That's perfectly fine, because these would disappear around the edge. It's just that we can't see them. There we go around this edge again as well. There. And then at the very bottom one, I think I'm just going to add some lines to the sides and leave a little highlight in the middle. It's too small for these. Now I need to go back and fill these in, and I'm going to do them with, where they're big enough, I'm going to put two smaller versions of that U shape, with the smallest one being filled in black to give it some darkness. And like here, where I can only fit one in, I'm going to fill it in with just black. And if I can't fit a thicker line in, I'll put a thinner line in. So it'll all work its way round in the end. So here, there's no way I'm going to try and do double ones. I'm just going to put the thicker ones in. Same here and here. So I'm really not happy with this, but perhaps by the time I've added shadow and highlights, it will all be a bit better. Okie dokes. Let's head for a blending stump and a pencil. I don't want the graphic, I want the matte, I think. No, let's use that one. This is ordinary graphite pencil. It's a 6B. So 6Bs are really quite dark. They're very soft, they're very easily blended. And hopefully I'll just be able to blend them out. And the idea isn't to blend them out too far, it's more to work the graphite into the paper. So here I'm thinking about where there'd be shadow, and this goes inside this part. So there would be some shadow along the edge here and here. And up there. And I am going to start to put just some shadow around the outside using what graphite there is on my pencil, just to suggest, on this blending stump, just to suggest there's a drop shadow there to lift this up off the paper. So I'm going to do it very simply, but I'm still going to do it. So I'm going to add shadow right the way, mostly around this side, but a lot towards the bottom and around the edge here, because there would be shadow around edges. But I also want to have some around the bottom here, because this is, if you imagine there's a highlighted spot up here, then everywhere else is going to be slightly shadowed. So I do want to make sure I've got enough graphite here to blend around, but to leave that highlighted spot as well. I will stop for a moment once I've done all the shadowing, so that if you wanted to have a close look at where the shadows are and so on at the end of the video, to inform yourself as you're perhaps replicating this in your own way, then that's fine. I'll do that for you. Now then, I do just need to, using an eraser, just to knock some of this back because it is a bit dark. This is what happens when you use a pencil. It's just a bit on the soft, too soft side. But it will give me plenty of graphite to add this drop shadow along the edge here and just blend that out. The drop shadow is just going to mimic the shape of the shell. It doesn't have to be exact, but I started it a little bit below the top and I'm extending it a little bit below the bottom. There would also be drop shadows underneath some of these areas, just a little bit, like so. Okay, so that's the drop shadowing done. Okay, here we're going to have shadow along the edge and underneath, underneath and along the edge, underneath and along the edge. I'm trying not to add too much here because I am aware how far this blends out and how dark it is. I've exactly got the best blending stamp, paper stump, tortillon. There is a difference between paper stumps and tortillons. This is a paper stump. It's made of compressed paper, and I clean them up by using some sandpaper, which takes some of the paper off, and it sands the paper and the graphite away, so it changes the shape of the point as well. If you're patient enough with the sandpaper and you don't mind the mess, you can get this into the shape you want, into a sharper point or a lower point. So I've got some shading going on here, which hopefully is bringing things out. I think I'm going to try and leave the white bits there white. And on these, I'm definitely going to put some shadow underneath the pointy bits, and also underneath the edge of this top part of the shell. And I am blending this out in a kind of circular shape around the corner, because I just think it will add to that feeling of having dips there. The other thing I want to do is this outside edge. I just want to lighten this just a bit on both sides, I think, like that. And that's my shading done. So let me just pop these back. I'm going to get some water. My jar of water is there. I want a brush. Go with that one. I've got some of the Karin brush paints here. I also have some tissue here so I can clean my brush or remove some of the water. Just making sure it's nice and damp. I used greens yesterday. Now I have got some, got this colour here, which is a lovely fire colour. So let's have a look at how this will add to this shell. Because the colour yesterday is what really brought the shell to life, wasn't it? So I'm going with a colour that is kind of similar to the shell itself, I suppose, from what I remember. But I do want to make sure that I want to have it slightly darker, so I've got a darker colour, the remains of a darker colour here. Actually, I might need to go up to the next colour So I can use a darker tone right the way where I want the colour the darkest. I should be able to move this colour a bit as well. I can. Try not to do too much of this because this is not watercolour paper. So it's mixed media paper, so it will take the water better than ordinary sketchbook paper. And then I think I might just add a hint of yellow here just to bring that back like that. How's that looking? Oh, it looks like it's glowing. Jolly good. Nothing wrong with a bit of glowing stuff. Now I am going to use that lovely warm pinky colour for the pinky orange for the spikes here, because I'm nearly out of that colour and I'm not going to dig out the Carin brush markers here and now. But because I've used another red that's on my palette for other parts, I can use it in these to add the shadows as well. These are very much like, in some ways, the what are they called? Ecoline ink brush pens, the Ecoline ink. So they are watercolour inks rather than watercolour paints. And they react with water and they're very vibrant. A little bit goes a long way. Okay, I am going to use some of this yellow here to add to this section, I think, because it will remind me of gold more than anything else. And I could add gold watercolour paint to it, because if I put a very thin wash over, I'd get some sparkle. Then I'm going to see what if I can just get enough of this, or of a pinky colour, pinky red out here. I think it would be fine if it is actually the darker red, to be honest, to add colour here. I am being not very fussy in how I work with these. I'm just trying to get colour down just to get the colour to work on top of the shadow. So I'm looking at where the shadows are darkest, and that's where I'll need the most colour. As long as I work while the paint's still damp, these colours will blend one into another, I'm sure, quite happily. I do like this. This is mixed all media paper from Sea White of Brighton. And it may not be very thick, it is buckling, but I do like it. It's really white. And for sketchbook work, for me, it's just the, well, it just works well enough for me. I work well with it. Me and it seem to get on. I don't get on with many papers, it has to be said, especially when I'm starting to add colour to things. But I just want to add a bit more intensity around the edges here, I think. Yeah, that'll be better. And I think I'll leave that as it is for now. It's not brilliant. It's not like yesterday's. Yesterday's was, well, I really liked yesterday's. So I'm going to use a slightly different red to fill these in, but I've used this in the other areas. I'm going to use the darker red I've just used on these sections. I'm just getting a wash of colour down, and then I can see what else I want to do with these sections afterwards. In fact, I need a bit more colour in that. It's a bit insipid, too much water, not enough colour. This is why I like alcohol markers, because the colour is consistent. Don't add water to it, you don't add anything to it. You're stuck with the colour that comes out the pen, and you shade with other colours. You add depth of colour and shadow using different colours. And I like that, it's simple. Watercolours, they vex me so blimming much. It's beyond a joke. Right then, we're going to go underneath these areas with a much darker colour. And I'm just going to touch around the edges as well down here, because I want to get that feeling that I've got a highlight in the middle, and that so these feel more like they are blending outwards. Bending outwards, not blending. So they don't dome up in the middle. I've missed around the edge with my brush. I've got some messy bits there, but I'll cope with that. I am not an expert colourist. I'm not an expert with watercolour. I don't pretend to be. And there are plenty of other excellent people who know how to use watercolours far better than me. I've watched them. I couldn't tell you the names. I've watched many of them. And I try what they suggest and it still don't work for me. So I just think watercolour isn't my medium. Nice thing about water-soluble colours, though, is that you can lift them with tissue paper. You just wet them with water. They're always water reactive, so I can always just pick some of them up to create that highlight there. This is going to need a lot of drying, but I've got the highlights. How's that looking? Looking on the screen is actually a really good thing for me, because I can see the illusion far better at a distance than close up. Rather than looking at the paper, I can see what I'm trying to get going on as it goes on. Okay, I want a colour for these sections, and I think I'm going to go with yellow again, just in keeping with the top. You know, yellow and red, they'll always go together, and they mix well together. They're close to each other on the colour wheel. And so I've got some orange here, so I'm going to add some orange along the edges, just to darken that yellow down a little bit. Again, it's about giving some shadow and highlight. And I can see here where I just need to soften these edges a little bit, perhaps. Pull them out. Fine. And I'm going to use gold, this golden yellow, in these sections as well. I can see this if I decide that I'm going to get these pens again. The colours are so much cleaner than the Tombow markers I had. They work in a very similar way. I don't like the blender pens that come with them. They tend to... I just don't get on well with blender pens, essentially. I don't know what it is about them. I'm also going to use some orange at the base and following the shadows here just to darken this colour a little bit, a bit more water. And so I can pick up some more of that orange and just add that there. And perhaps a little bit at the bottom of these, maybe. I might add just a hint of orange or yellow on this one as well, just to tie those colours together there. This section here could also do the lined section here could do with some shadows, so I'm going to use the orange for that. Putting some on this side, and then some on the opposite side like so. Perhaps just needs a little bit of water just to blend them out while they're still damp. Sorry, my voice seems to be going here. And I think I'm just going to add some water here just to lighten some of those areas up as well. Just picking the water up with this. Okie dokes, let's have a look. Now I do have got some purple, but not very much. I've got a bluey purple and I've got a mauvey colour here, so I think I'll use the mauvey colour just to go in to these sections and just add a little bit more shadow there to the side. I think that'll work quite nicely. It's about intensifying shadows and working with them. I think I prefer this to the bluer purple, possibly. Just going to soften the edges a bit. There we go. And that looks not too shabby. What do you think? I hope you think it's not too shabby. I think that might be okay. The one thing I didn't do yesterday, and do you know, I'm trying to keep this well under an hour, all of these, and I'm working quickly, quicker than I perhaps would like to, is yesterday, the one thing I didn't do was to add white highlights, so let's go for it today. And I can go back and do yesterday's. So I think I'm going to add some highlights inside these spaces. 1 or 3 or 4 or however many I can fit into each of these little bursts. It increases the texture. It also adds those little highlights. I'm just using an 08, yeah, it's an 08 jelly roll. I might just pop a dot here and there in between them, especially where there's some large spaces, and perhaps around the lightest part as well. And if I can get them on that harsh line, it'll disguise that line a bit. I think I might just pop some along this edge, because I think there would be light there, and there'd be perhaps light along here. This one I'm going to pop them on this side of the line. Not the other side though, just this side. Okay, I think that'll be okay. I'm going to come back to this when it's nice and dry because I want to do black and white squares there, I think. This one I'm going to pop, if I can get the gel ink to flow, a dot just in the middle of each of these sections. Not on the black area, but on these edges. And as we get to the bottom, there's just 1 dot per little archy thing. Just a few dots there, and then a couple of dots or some dots in the middle of these sections just to put some highlight there. On this one, dots are towards the top and middle because they'll be where they're catching light, and along the edge of these little spiky bits perhaps. Well, I've used white. You could choose to use something like gold if you wanted to. In fact, that would look quite nice, but I'm not today. Okay, on this one I am going to add some little dots close to the edge in the middle of this, but not too far into that hole. I think we'll add some dots along this upper section, perhaps there and there, perhaps one there. again, dots along these. I can see this whole upper area needs a bit of contrast because this colour is very flat around these sections. I've got some highlights here. So on this one again, I'm going to pop dots in this area with these particular shapes. I'm also going to put some dots in here, but I'm going to let some spill into the black lined areas. So I'm going to pop some there. On this one, I am going to run some down the centre of these sections. On the perks, I'm going to pop them towards the top. On this one, I think we'll just pop some around the middle and down the centre there. So just very, very slight dottiness going on, but it does make that little bit of a difference, surprisingly. Maybe not on the camera. The camera doesn't pick everything up. Okay, I said I wanted to make this area stripy, so that's exactly what I'm going to do quite quickly. It's that contrast. It will also make it feel that I've done this a bit more deliberately, which I did, but it just doesn't look right here at the moment. I think the lines are perhaps too thin in comparison with other sections, but we'll see how I feel once I've done this, because I do like black and white squares or stripes. I like the high contrast. And of course they always add a touch of whimsicality as far as I'm concerned. I know I haven't got white stripes here, I've got gold, but I could use the Jelly Roll pen to add white to them. We'll see now in a moment. So while I'm doing this, I should have done this sooner in the video, but I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who subscribed. I appreciate it very much. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. It doesn't cost you a thing. Then that tiny bit of energy you need to click on the subscribe button, however you're going to click on it, whether it's with your finger, your mouse pointer, whatever. And thank you for all the lovely comments as well, because they really, really do mean a lot to me. But also the suggestions for content. I'm always willing to listen to suggestions. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to act on them, but it might jog my mind off in a different direction. This series of videos, this is number 3 in the series of drawing stylized whimsical seashells, wouldn't have happened if somebody hadn't asked for it. Well, it might have eventually. I might have worked it out eventually, but chances are I wouldn't. So here I'm just tidying up where the white dots have overspilled the black lines in places, or where I just want to make sure I've got a definite black line. And I think I'm going to call this one also done. So I hope this has made sense to you. I hope that you found it enjoyable and that you'll have a go at drawing a shell like this and with your own variations or your own choice of patterns to fill it in. As I've said, the basic structure is very simple. We've basically got a teardrop shape and then a V shape attached. The rest of it is splitting that V shape up into these, lumpy bumpy bits. I don't know how to describe them because it's a spiral, isn't it? We're looking at part of a spiral. This top bit is also triangular shaped, but it's a kind of wavy, curvy triangle. And here it's made of a curved line, lots of little triangles and then other curved lines in between. But you're free to do as you wish here. There are some lovely Zentangle patterns you could put along the edge that are like lace. I don't know what they're called. I'd have to look them up, but you can find them. Tanglepatterns.com is a great resource. There are thousands and thousands of tangle patterns there. It's ridiculous. And but a good place to look and find out. So I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me. I had hoped to keep this to much less than an hour, but hey ho. Art takes time, doesn't it? And I've been really quick. But thank you for joining me. Look after yourselves and take time to be creative. Ta-ra for now.